Spend any amount of time on BookTok or any bookish space, and you'll hear about the 100 Books a Year challenge. Now, this is pretty self-explanatory. From the beginning of the year, on January 1st, to the end on December 31st, you have to read 100 books. What counts as a book is subjective. Some people count audiobooks, while others don't, and there's debate over whether or not graphic novels or manga should count, given that these can be read in a sitting. Ultimately, what counts as a book is subjective, and up to the reader in the end. Regardless of what limits you set for yourself, the idea is to read more, discover new books, and yes, give yourself some bragging rights. For my part, I wanted to do two things. I wanted to create a habit of reading more often, and I wanted to be able to say I'd completed the challenge. However, having achieved the goal, using, like many, the Goodreads platform to track my achievements, there are 4 things I learned. While overall I had fun, it would do the challenge again, it's not something I would do every year, nor would I recommend it for everyone. And I'm going to explain why. Before we dive in, I'm Riley and this is Otherworldly Fiction. On this channel, I rant about books, discuss my bookish opinions, and offer the occasional writing advice. If any of that sounds like your cup of tea, hit the subscribe button. Despite the popularity of the 100 Books a Year challenge, there are some drawbacks, not the least being those which impact your ability to enjoy reading itself or treat the books you're reading with the respect they deserve. If you're considering challenging yourself this year, here are 4 reasons why you might want to reconsider. Reason number 1, you don't absorb the books. Having to read so fast affected how well I could take in the books I was enjoying. As I flew through whole trilogies in a single weekend, or even read 2 books in a day, everything started to blur together. I wasn't taking the time to think about the books I was reading, or allowing myself to savor them. In some cases, I feel this led to a lack of understanding, at least when it comes to some of the scenes I read, as well as a greater struggle to imagine what was happening, and therefore immerse myself. When you don't give yourself time to sit back and reflect, it can be easy to overlook what you've just read. You also lose the privilege of prolonging your enjoyment. Many readers will put off reading a book's end because they're loving it so much. They'll feel sad because the book is over and there isn't another to look forward to. When you invest in a book over weeks or even months, you're able to grow closer to the characters, to become attached to the world, and to immerse yourself. While I technically spent the same amount of time with the characters, I didn't have those days or weeks in between to reflect on the chapters I'd read, or try to guess what would happen next. In short, I didn't spend all that time thinking about the characters and the world the way a typical reader would have, which means that I never wholly lost myself. This is unfortunate, because a book should be read, first and foremost, for enjoyment. And I feel that by barreling through everything so quickly, I did a disservice to some of the writers, because I didn't take my time with their work the way I should have. The second reason is that it's expensive. Reading isn't the priciest hobby in the world, but it's not the cheapest either. While readers have affordable alternatives like free copies of public domain books or the library, many still prefer to buy the books they read, so they can read them again, so they can build a collection, or so they can do the ever-popular book haul video. It's something of a running joke in the reading community that you can't buy just one book. Readers literally have to put themselves on book buying bans just to protect their finances. And I've seen too many videos where a person goes in to buy 1 book and walks out with 3. Like many other hobbies, reading has become heavily commercialized. This has even led to concerns that books are becoming another disposable commodity like clothes, with titles potentially of lesser quality being pumped out so as to meet this consumerist demand. On BookTok in particular, people are notorious for buying subscription boxes, participating in book hauls, obsessing over spreads, and collecting every special edition they can. We thought gamers were bad with their loot crates, but are we any better? Reading can be an affordable hobby, and for my part, I try to buy many of my books used. Most are paperbacks, and I'll go out of my way to visit independent stores, which often carry even newer titles for as little as $12. But that still adds up. After all, I've probably bought around 100 books this year, and while I'm in a good place financially, with my bank account slowly growing bigger, I'm sure I'd still be horrified if I totaled what I spent on books overall. It doesn't help that some books can only be found in hardcovers or special editions. The second Fourth Wing has already been released, but thus far, a paperback version of the first book doesn't even exist, meaning everyone who has read it so far had to spend a minimum of $25 to get their hands on it. There's always the library, of course, but as I've noted before, content creation has encouraged readers not only to buy more books, but to buy those with bells and whistles, including hardcovers, sprayed edges, illustrations, and author signatures. Some even make a point of collecting multiple special editions of the same book. Plus, for those who just want to read new releases, libraries can subject readers to notoriously long wait lists, with some readers waiting weeks on end to take out something like Fourth Wing, driving those who are impatient to buy a copy of their own. The third problem is that you make reading a chore. With the proliferation of communities like BookTok, we've almost turned reading into a competition, not taking into account that every reader has vastly different circumstances. Some have accused BookTok of turning reading, which should be relaxing, into another form of hustle culture, and those who visit the platform can receive a skewed version of what it means to be a good reader. The majority of people will probably only read 5 to 10 books in a year, assuming they have the time when all their other responsibilities are considered. But the videos you see on BookTok can make it look like everybody is reading 100 books a year, or breezing through a series every other weekend. We're only seeing a handful of people, privileged enough to not only read excessively, but post videos about it. But they aren't representative of readers as a whole. Worse, many can feel they're not a true reader if they don't reach these outrageous deadlines. If they don't read every day, or beat some ridiculous goal, they can start to feel like they're a failure or an imposter. But this is reading we're talking about. Something that should be casual and fun. If someone only managed to watch 2 seasons of a TV show in a year, we wouldn't say they weren't a true TV watcher. If you only read 1 book this year, it's still fair to call yourself a reader, especially if you have other responsibilities or hobbies that take precedent. It's always good to read more if you can, since reading is good for your brain. But you're not a failure or a fake reader if you don't meet some preconceived goal. Challenging yourself should be fun, but if you push yourself too hard, you can turn what should have been a relaxing pastime into a chore. Worse, if you're taking the time to post content and feel pressured to buy a certain number of books to impress others, you're adding stress to yourself you don't need to be. I read 100 books this year. I enjoy watching book haul videos, and I don't have a problem with them. But I'm also in a position of privilege. I don't have a child to pay for. I don't have soccer games to attend or people I need to drive to places. As a pet sitter, I don't even have that much commuting to do. Mine is a job which affords me a lot of free time, something that's an exception for most people. Allowances have to be made for the limitations most readers have, and when you get caught up in a challenge like reading 100 books, it can be too easy to turn a passion into a chore. The fourth reason is that you're performing for others. Part of why reading becomes a chore is because of the need to perform. Whether that's BookTok or BookTube or a bookish blog, many of us feel a need to create content. Now, in and of itself, there's nothing wrong with content creation, provided it's something we enjoy. There's nothing wrong with challenging yourself if you're doing so to have fun. The problem comes when you do the right thing for the wrong reasons. In this case, the right thing is reading, and the wrong reason is a desire to gain fame, impress others, or build views. If you want to make a living talking about books, I can't knock that dream, as it's mine too. However, whether it's TikTok or YouTube, you should still be having fun. If the only reason you're reading 100 books this year is because you want to boast to new followers, you should reconsider. Readers have burned themselves out trying to complete the challenge, which defeats the purpose of reading in the first place, just so they can live up to the expectations they and their followers have placed on themselves. They might pull all-nighters or withdraw from their friends to read more books, doing more harm than good. Again, I'm not saying there's anything wrong with challenging yourself or taking pride in what you've achieved. I feel good about myself for completing the challenge, and I'm proud to share it with you. But I didn't start the challenge in the first place just so I could look cool. There are many reasons you might read 100 books in a year, including wanting to discover more books, create a habit, or join a community. And you should be honest with yourself when it comes to why you want to do this. In the end, reading 100 books in a year doesn't have to be a bad thing. In fact, my experience overall was positive, and I wouldn't be opposed to doing it again. But I don't know that I want to do it again this year, and it's not something I'd recommend anyone do every year of their lives. Whether it's the lack of engagement you're having with the books you're reading, the financial strain, the pressure to keep up, or the need to perform, there are at least 4 reasons you shouldn't participate in the challenge this year. Again, I don't want to discourage those of you who are in earnest. Reading more is good for you, and as I said earlier, there are also benefits to reading more. That said, all I ask is that you think about why you want to complete this challenge. For all the benefits, there are still drawbacks, including an inability to immerse yourself as deeply in the books you're engaging with. And it's worth knowing them before you make the attempt. If you're still determined to do this challenge, one of the biggest obstacles can be the cost. Thankfully, there are ways to save money on books, which I go over in the video on the left. And if you want to hear what else I learned from reading 100 books in a year, I covered that on the right. Thank you for watching, and happy reading!